Funding provided by the North Dakota Council on the Arts, the North Dakota Humanities Council, and by the members of Prairie Public.
Hello and welcome to Prairie Pulse. Coming up a little bit later in the show, we'll have the 2018 Poetry Out Loud winner. But first, joining me now is Skylar Dutton, a safety consultant. And Skylar, let's get started, and thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course, you were formerly with North Dakota Safety Council also, should have mentioned that. But as we get started, tell the folks a little bit about yourself and your background, where you're originally from.
All right, I grew up in northeastern Montana, just 100 miles from North Dakota, 60 miles from Canada, so way up there. Grew up son of a pilot, so we were out, spent a lot of time out in wheat fields while he's crop dusting and all of that. I got away, went to college, went away, went to Jamestown and got a degree in criminal justice, and that's kind of where all the safety stuff started. I decided I wanted to be a police officer, so went out and I was a police officer for just under 10 years, and then I left and did some stuff in the oil field and came back and stumbled my way into the North Dakota Safety Council and started really training people there.
Okay. Well, so what is a safety consultant, and are you licensed?
So there's no, I'm not licensed. There's no licensing. What I do, the trainings that I give, I pull off of experience that I've got. Now there are some trainings where a license is required, right? CPR, first aid, that sort of stuff. You need to have a license or a endorsement from American Heart Association or Red Cross or something like that. But for the stuff that that is really in my wheelhouse are things that I learned in my law enforcement career that are interesting to other people, that are helpful to other people to know that maybe they don't come across in their everyday life. So provide some insight and some I guess information that way.
Yeah. So what things are you involved in? As it pertains to sort of being that police officer and your former profession.
Yeah, the things that I get really passionate about are teaching people how to protect themselves, how to stay safe, how to be aware, and then I love talking about drugs and drug impairment. That was a specialty of mine when I was a police officer. I got certified as a drug recognition expert. So I used that advanced certification. I'm not certified any longer in that, but I use that training, that information to help supervisors, human resources professionals, those sorts of people to recognize signs and symptoms of impairment of workers. And then we talk about, okay, now what? What sort of program do you have to have as far as a reasonable suspicion program goes at work, and what are some of the rules and regulations regarding drug testing?
Okay. We talked about you used to be with North Dakota Safety Council. What did you do there?
So my title was safety consultant. I traveled the state. I taught in about every corner of the state in the year that I was there, and I did everything from CPR training, defensive driving training, the same drug stuff that I was just talking about, the self-protection trainings, so kind of anything and everything that they offered. I did anything other than like occupational. I didn't do anything with OSHA. That's not my wheelhouse.
Okay. Do you find more people want to learn to defend themselves nowadays, and how do you help them achieve this?
Yeah, so that's actually something that's gotten quite a bit of attention lately. Just with certain events that are going on, people are very interested in, well, how do I protect myself? So I've got a course that I walk people through. There's a classroom portion to it where we talk about, why is it important? What are some of the things that you can do that is not a hands-on defensive move, right? Making sure your awareness is on point, or making sure that you really do have situational awareness, so that if you see a bad situation, we can go ahead and back out of that, and we don't ever have to get ourselves so close that we have to go hands-on. And then towards the end of it, we do practice some of that hands-on stuff and let you beat up on another classmate. Or
Well, because well, that was kind of awareness. It seems to be, to me, a big part of it, because you can avoid a number of things without confrontation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so that is important. Okay. Well, you talk about drug recognition and things, and let's just talk about the opioid crisis a little bit. And
Okay.
how does this pertain to safety?
Opioids are extremely dangerous, particularly the synthetic, the ones of the synthetic variety, and they're so dangerous because they can be absorbed through your skin. They can be absorbed if they're in a powder form and it gets in the air. You can absorb that particulate through your respiratory or through your mucous membranes. And it only takes, some of those have a lethal dose as low as 2 milligrams, which is not very much. And there are some out on the market that have a lethal dose that is less than that. So any white powder would be a cause for concern if you don't know exactly what it is.
Well, with that said, well, what are some of the things you're seeing out there as it pertains to the opioid crisis?
Well, there's a few different routes we can talk about. One is controlling access to it, right? We found that one of the biggest issues along with the opioid crisis is that people had an ease of access to it. That means if you had a surgery or procedure, you got prescribed hydrocodone or oxycodone, and you do what with them? You leave them on your counter, leave them in your bathroom, something like that. Well, if you happen to have a friend or your kid's friend or something like that, somebody that visits your house that you don't know what's going on in their personal life, whether or not they've become addicted to that. Now they've just got an ease of access, and those things are getting either swiped or taken without permission, and it's really was driving and fueling that epidemic for a while. So one thing that people can do for that is to manage their medications, lock them up. I always tell people to treat them like you would treat a firearm, right? Be a responsible prescription drug possessor. Lock it up, be accountable for those sorts of things. But it's interesting, I was actually just reading an article where large employers are still spending over $2 billion a year on opioid-related treatment and stuff. They've seen a decrease in the number of people that are using, but they still have to. There's treatment costs. There's other fees that or other costs that are associated with that, and they're still spending over $2 billion a year.
Yeah, and you talked about it a little bit at home, being careful, because you never know when your children's friends come in, and not to say kids aren't good, but
right.
And even travelers should be aware. When you travel in your toiletries,
yeah.
Because you never know who's in your room and who might go through.
And that's just it. You just never know, and you don't ever really know what's. People don't walk around with the sign that says, "Hey, I'm opiate addicted," and sometimes it's opioid addicted, and it can be somebody that you wouldn't suspect. You just don't know. So it's best to be responsible with your medication, so that.
Yeah. Do you think things are getting better?
I think we are moving in the right direction because we've got there's a large awareness now. Things really spiked and kind of hit us broadside in 2009. There was a lot of prescriptions filled for these, and so there was a lot of prescriptions out there. A lot of people that were becoming opiate addicted. There are starting to be processes put in place where doctors are able to check to see when was the last time this person was prescribed this medication. Employers are becoming more aware of what they can do to monitor these sort of issues, and what are some of the benefits of rehabilitating some of these workers. So I think we are moving in the right direction with that issue.
Mm-hmm. Let's go back to self-protection. Can a person protect him or herself without owning a weapon?
Yeah, absolutely they can. Just like we talked about before, awareness is the biggest key there, right? If you are walking around and aware of your surroundings, you are able to see if you're about to enter into a potentially dangerous situation. Now, it's not this isn't applicable to 100% of situations, right? But the majority, if you are able to see that you are entering a threatening situation and you can either avoid it, deter it somehow, there is necessarily no need to go hands-on or have a weapon with you. Yeah.
Well, can you tell us about how you train people?
So I focus on that awareness part a lot, because I think that is key. Getting your face out of your phone, keeping your head up, carrying yourself with a little bit of confidence, right? Shoulders back, head up, making eye contact with people as you go by. I'm not necessarily mean mugging everybody you go by. That's a good key thing to key in on there. But talking with or carrying yourself with confidence, and not being an easy target.
Mean mugging, I like that. So you have training programs, I understand. Yeah. Can you tell us about those, and how can people get registered for those? So
I haven't, as a consultant, fairly new to this, I haven't scheduled a lot of trainings. I've been doing most of it by request. So I've got an email address that we can give out here, but I've got, it's very much word of mouth, or people that have heard about me that will contact me. So actually right now I've got a training coming up in Nebraska for a manufacturer, and I'm going to be speaking to a company, doing a 2-hour presentation on opioids there, and then doing a presentation on for our human resources group.
Okay, we're good. Let's turn to maybe school safety. Always, a hot topic. Do a lot of schools have armed safety officers on site, or what's going on there?
That's is one of the really great programs in the schools right now, and it's actually been in place for a while. It's the school resource officer programs, where there is an armed licensed police officer or deputy on campus at most high schools now. I was a school resource officer for 2 years in my law enforcement career, and I think it's one of the best programs that police departments can be involved with. But yeah, to answer your question, yeah, there are armed police officers in most schools.
Mm-hmm. Do you think this is something that we'll continue to see?
I think so, and a lot of it is not just to have that armed guard standing there, right? The role of the school resource officer is really to be a liaison and develop positive relationships with students and staff, be a resource for those people there, so that if an issue does pop up where police involvement is needed, they don't have to wait on a response time from another unit. They may be tied up on another end of the town.
Okay. Let's talk about, I guess, safety in a vehicle. Okay. What is the importance of wearing seatbelts?
Oh, your survivability rate for a crash goes up by 50% just by clicking that seatbelt across your body. You hear people's arguments all the time that they're a safe driver, they know what they're doing, they're in control of their vehicle. Well, that may be true, but you're not in control of the other vehicles that are coming at you. You're not in complete control of what the environment is going to do. You can't control where the black patch of ice is going to be. So it's so easy to put that thing on, and like I said, your survivability rate goes up 50% just by having it on.
Mm-hmm. And what about car seats for kids? When is it recommended for a child to of course, be able to sit up front?
Yep. Anybody under the age of 13 should be in the back seat. Okay. That's a recommendation from the National Safety Council.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about this, but talk about how, I understand you try to reach motorists to tell them, put your cell phones down when you're driving.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pet peeve. You pull up at a stop sign anywhere or a stoplight somewhere, and people are constantly on their phone, not necessarily aware of what's going on around them, whether or not they just ran through a red light, or if there's a pedestrian crossing the street. It's just a huge hazard.
Well, how many times you say you pull up to a red light beside each other and somebody's looking down, and you may turn to the right and they see the vehicle moving and they just start going.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Awareness of your surroundings. Yeah. Talk about some of the tough aspects of course, being a police officer and the things you dealt with when you were on the force.
Okay. Man, there's a bunch of different ways you could take that. Some of the things that are hardest on a police officer, I would imagine in my experience, were the schedule conflicts, right? Mm-hmm. I worked night shift for seven of those years, and nothing else gets scheduled at night, right? Your court appearances are during the day. You're running sleep deprived most of the time, and sleep is a huge issue. There's all sorts of research that says that people that are operating on under 5 hours of sleep really aren't performing at their best, and so those people are expected to have good functional relationships with their significant others and their kids, manage everything, and then they're responsible to go out and make all these decisions that potentially have great impact on other people. That was a huge issue. And then you know, it gets tough seeing anything bad happen to kids, whether it's a family issue or a traffic crash or something like that. Those are some of the hardest things that I had to wrestle with.
You know, much as we talk about in our communities, I mean, the firefighters and the police officers are our heroes out there, and it's so important. And you were on the force, did you say, for 10 years?
Just under 10 years,
yeah.
Yep.
So what made you decide maybe it was time to move on and find something else to do?
It just...
It was the right time? Or?
It was the right time, yeah. I enjoyed my time as a police officer, and people ask all the time if you miss it, and I do. I think I was pretty good at it, but it was just time to move on to something else. Like I said, for family reasons, and I wanted my kids to have me around a little bit more. So, not saying that it's the right choice for everybody, but it was the right choice for me.
Mm-hmm. How important is it for ordinary citizens, and again, what does ordinary mean, to know CPR and first aid? That's everybody.
Yeah, I don't know why anybody wouldn't be certified in that. I tell everybody when I was teaching that, the great thing about CPR is that your company is paying for it, because most of the time people weren't there on their own accord, and you get to use this training anywhere you go. You get to use it in your personal life, if you're at a family reunion, or if you're in somewhere out with your family. Most often, you're either going to use that Heimlich maneuver or CPR on a loved one, and it's just great to. It's a great skill set to have.
And for people who say, "Oh yeah, I was trained in CPR 20 years ago," CPR has changed a little bit.
It has, yeah. It seems like they change the recommended practices every couple of years. So one of the great things that they've implemented lately is that the compressions are greater than the breath. Breath is still important if help is going to be delayed, but if you can't get yourself to do mouth to mouth or whatever, compressions is going to keep that blood and oxygen circulating until help arrives.
Mm-hmm. And what basic first aid was stop the bleeding, start the breathing, or something like that. So that I remember. Yeah. What's the best part of your job?
I love knowing that that I'm able to influence somebody in a positive way. If I can bring information to them that helps keep them safe, helps improve their life somehow, or helps keep a loved one safe, that's what it's all about. I love when I'm doing a training. I like being able to talk about a serious topic, right? Talking about drug abuse and the consequences are a pretty heavy topic, and infusing it with a little bit of humor so that it's easily digestible and easier retained, and not as doom and gloom. I think that there is a need to be cautious, but we can go about it in a positive way, and I love being able to have that impact where people will really retain the information instead of being scared by the message.
Yeah. So with your background of a police officer and working with the Safety Council, so what's your goal for where you're taking your consulting group, I guess?
Yep. Right now, just hoping to. I haven't put a lot of direct marketing out there. Just helping people as the opportunity arrives. I've had a lot of people recently ask about self-protection. It is one of those hot button issues right now, and you know, I'll piece some stuff together and get that taken care of as the need is there.
Yeah, sounds like you'll customize it depending on the needs of the organization or the individual.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, with that said, if people want more information about your services or even about the North Dakota Safety Council, where can they go? Who can they contact? So
for the North Dakota Safety Council, they've got a website. It's www.ndsc.org. And they've got some phenomenal resources there, especially as it relates to school safety. Mm-hmm. For me, myself, if people want me to come out and speak about drug impairment or something like that, they can get a hold of me at an email address, 2arrowsconsultingllc at gmail.com, or give me a call.
All right. Well, Skylar, we're out of time, so thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. Stay tuned for more. Poetry Out Loud is a competition that encourages students to learn about poetry while they master public speaking skills and also build self-confidence. Maria Motituya of Fargo North High School is North Dakota's 2018 State Poetry Out Loud champion.
If I speak for the dead, I must leave this animal of my body. I must write the same poem. Poetry just helps you in life. Whenever you're struggling in life, poetry helps with that. It helps you kind of get back on track. It's all about the poem and what the author is giving to us. Poetry Out Loud is a competition that starts in the classroom level. So everybody in the class would choose a poem and they would perform it. And whoever won that competition would go to the school level. And so at the school level, whoever wins that then goes on to state. And then whoever wins state goes to nationals. The judges are looking for a certain criteria. They're looking for your presence, your posture, how well you articulate the words, and if you have an interpretation, if you understand it, and then accuracy, if you know your poem. You have to choose your poem from the Poetry Out Loud website. One of your poems have to be pre-20th century, and another one has to be under 24 lines. And then the last one is your choice. I wake to sleep and take my waking slow. I feel my fate and what I cannot fear. I learn by going where I have to go. We think by feeling. What is there to know? I really, really enjoy performing poetry. I don't know, I'm a very emotive person because I love making other people feel, and if I could do that, it just brings me joy.
Our champion for 2018, Would Maria Modi.
Before I did Poetry Out Loud, I didn't like poetry that much just because it was hard. I was just kind of like, poetry, whatever, I don't get it. But now it's like, wow, Maria has all this knowledge about poetry and she understands it, and it kind of builds my character. I would encourage people to participate in Poetry Out Loud because it boosts your confidence and it gives you knowledge and understanding for things that are hard and complex. We have walked in love's land a little way. We have learned his lessons a little while. And shall we not part at the end of day with a sigh, a smile? A little while in the shine of the sun, we were twined together, joined lips, forgot how the shadows fall when the day is done, and when love is not. Advice that I would give to somebody thinking about participating in Poetry Out Loud is just relax and be natural. You should have passion for your poems that you are delivering. If you don't have that, that will show through your performance. So find passion in your poems and everything else will come. I definitely think poetry is going to be a part of my life throughout going into college and for the rest of my future. It has played such a significant part in my life. When I was younger, I was the shyest person ever. I had no confidence, and poetry was my place. It will live with me for the rest of my life. My poem is Author's Prayer by Ilya Kaminsky. This author is trying to understand how he's supposed to speak for a soldier that has died. He has never experienced that, so how is he supposed to do that? He would have to put himself aside in order to understand this person and their story. Author's Prayer by Ilya Kaminsky. If I speak for the dead, I must leave this animal of my body. I must write the same poem over and over, for an empty page is the white flag of their surrender. if I speak for them. I must walk on the edge of myself. I must live as a blind man who runs through rooms without touching the furniture. Yes, I live. I can cross the streets asking, "What year is it?" I can dance in my sleep and laugh in front of the mirror. Even sleep is a prayer. Lord, I will praise your madness, and in the language not mine, speak of music that wakes us, music in which we move. For whatever I say is a kind of petition, and the darkest days must I praise.
Well, that's all we have on Prairie Pulse for this week. But as always, thanks for watching.
Funding provided by the North Dakota Council on the Arts, the North Dakota Humanities Council, and by the members of Prairie Public.